Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Antonio. My name is Kelly Timmons. I have been a member of First UU for 10 years. I have served as the maintenance chair and on the worship committee. Here, I found my spiritual home, and it is a gift that I absolutely treasure. Our weekly worship is where we connect, share information, and inspiration. To begin, let's acknowledge this geographical place where we are currently located, the home of and the traditional lands of the Coahuiltecan people, original and indigenous stewards of this land, now called Bexar County and San Antonio, Texas. At our church, we believe and act in a universal love that binds us in mutual care and affection, especially in our work for justice for all and for our planet. Our faith is all inclusive, and all really means all. If you're new to us or visiting for the first time, we welcome you to sign in on the chat stream and fill out a visitor's card. We'd like to get to know you and to follow up with you. Please know, wherever you are on your life's journey, we hope you will find your place with us, just like I did 10 years ago.
The flaming chalice unites our members in worship and symbolizes the spirit of our faith. Today's chalice lighting words remind us that we are one. May the single flame we now kindle remind us that we are one, that the struggles and wounds of each of us impact us all. We grow together. We fail together. We move forward on the path only by walking side by side. By giving ourselves to the greater whole, we find ourselves again. May this morning's gathering help us take another step along our way.
Hi, my name is Rick Sutter, and I've been a member of this church since 2001. Please join me in our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
I would like to dedicate the opening words today to the memory of my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Dominic Barragona, who we called Rocky. He was killed on May 19, 2003, on a highway in Iraq at age 42. For him and all the fallen, this poem graces many national cemeteries, including Arlington National Cemetery, where my friend is buried. It's called The Soldier's Last Tattoo by Theodore O'Hara. The muffled drum's sad roll has beat, the soldier's last tattoo. No more on life's parade shall meet the brave and fallen few. On fame's eternal camping ground, their silent tents are spread, and glory guards with solemn round the bivouac of the dead.
As a way for us to connect as a community, you're invited to share a joyful event, a sorrow, or a concern by entering it on the chat screen. Please let us know what is in your heart, for ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we come fully alive. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are heard and held in compassion. At this time of uncertainty, may we listen more deeply and grow more involved with and connected to each other. Now let's join in silent meditation as we write our joys and sorrows on the chat screen, and Jaime plays our meditation music.
Our reading today is We Remember Them. At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us, as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us, as we remember them.
Tomorrow is Memorial Day. This is an observance that has been around for about a century and a half, since the end of the U.S. Civil War. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of one of the first Memorial Day observances ever. It might even have been the very first. Historian David Blight tells us that this early Memorial Day commemoration happened just a few days after the end of the Civil War in the southern city of Charleston, South Carolina. Among the first Union soldiers to march into the city singing liberation songs was the 21st United States Colored Infantry. The Union soldiers had fought to free the Black people that were held in slavery in the South, which was called the Confederacy. Thousands of Black people, most of whom had been enslaved, held many ceremonies to mark the occasion of their new freedom. One of the biggest observances was held at a race course in Charleston that had been made into a prison for Union soldiers. The captives had been kept in horrible conditions, and many had died and been hastily buried there. After the war, Black workmen went to the site, reburied the Union dead properly, and built a high fence around the cemetery. They whitewashed the fence and built an archway over an entrance on which they inscribed the words, "Martyrs of the Racecourse." The newly freed Black people, along with some white missionaries and teachers, had a parade of 10,000 people on the track. The procession was led by 3,000 Black school children carrying armloads of flowers and singing. Several hundred women followed with baskets of flowers, wreaths, and crosses. Within the cemetery enclosure, a black children's choir sang "We'll Rally Around the Flag," the Star-Spangled Banner, and spirituals, and then ministers read from the Bible. After the dedication, the crowd did what many of us do on Memorial Day, enjoyed picnics, listened to speeches, and watched soldiers drill. Among the full brigades of Union infantrymen participating were the famous 54th Massachusetts and the 34th and 104th United States Colored Troops, who performed a special double-columned march around the gravesite. I hope you thought this story was interesting. Here's something else you might think is interesting. No one in modern times knew this story until just about 25 years ago. You see, after that first Memorial Day, people who had been part of the Confederacy came back to Charleston and started their own traditions of observances that glorified the Southern cause, and the memory of that first celebration faded away. Then one day, in 1996, a Harvard professor got permission to look through some old records that no one had looked at for decades, and he found out all about this first original Memorial Day.
It is now time for the offertory. The offertory brings us the opportunity to share our gifts, gifts that have nourished our hearts and can bring inspiration and care to others. We are grateful for the opportunity to share generosity, to give from our hearts, and to support meaningful purposes. Please enjoy this amazing trumpet and piano anthem.
We are grateful for the opportunity to share generously, to give from our hearts, and to support meaningful purposes. Meade Adams is a chaplain in the U.S. Air Force. He has served in Louisiana, Arizona, Texas, and soon to be New Jersey. He has a master's in divinity from Andrews University and served as a civilian pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist denomination for 5 years prior to entering the military chaplaincy. As a chaplain, Meade accommodates the religious needs of airmen and personnel to ensure that they are able to carry out their constitutional right to practice their faith or to practice no faith. He is a minister to some, but a chaplain to all. Another role of the military chaplain is to provide ethical, moral, and spiritual advisement to leadership on a variety of issues. In his time as a chaplain, Meade has worked with a wide array of faith groups and traditions, including Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, paganism, Christian Science, the Church of Latter-day Saints, Buddhism, and many more, including Unitarian Universalism. Chaplain Adams is a published poet and writer, as well as a father and a husband. He enjoys riding, hiking, watching and playing sports, and playing his guitar and harmonica.
Good morning. I'm Chaplain Meade Adams, and first and foremost, it is an honor and a privilege to speak with you today. I'm grateful for the invitation from Reverend Scribatz to speak with you on this Memorial Day occasion. I would like to just take a few moments to speak with you on the subject, No Greater Love. We are here today to commemorate and celebrate veterans, those who have engaged in military service for a short period of time, an entire career, and especially those who paid the ultimate price of their lives. In my 5.5 years of service, I've discovered that people enter into the service for a variety of reasons. Some join for the opportunity to advance their education. Some join for the benefits and security the military provides. Some join to follow in the legacy left behind by parents and grandparents. And yes, there are some who join for the ideals of freedom, service, and justice. The ideals of integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Regardless of why they choose to raise their right hand and take the oath, they all committed to serve their country and, if necessary, pay the ultimate price on its behalf. I know I chose to leave the comfort of my parish in Virginia and put on this uniform for adventure, to feel like I was making a difference and serve other men and women that wear the uniform. First and foremost, however, I chose to put on this uniform because I believed I was called to do so. Called to a higher purpose, called to counsel, preach, comfort, exhort, bring joy and hope and peace to others that serve. I've had the privilege during this past year to serve at Brooke Armory Medical Center as a chaplain to the patients and staff. I've stood by the bedside of dying men and women with their loved ones. I've seen lives tragically taken by car accidents, gunshots, and even plane crashes this year. I've assisted the doctors in breaking the news to the families. I've facilitated services for men and women that serve their country and have now passed on, making sure they receive the military honors due to them. That is why I serve. That is why I will be proud that when I hang up this uniform, I will be called a veteran. Like my uncle, a retired master sergeant who served in Desert Storm, and another uncle that served aboard a nuclear submarine, and my grandfather, who served in World War II. I will carry on their legacy of service. I have not yet had the opportunity to experience ministry in a deployed setting, but I have several comrades in the Chaplain Corps who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. They are on the front lines ministering to the men and women who have been separated from their families, who are fighting for freedom and peace. They are officiating worship services, administering sacraments and rites, visiting airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, planning events to boost morale and raise their spirits, and counseling them when times get hard. When marriages are rocky, when they feel overworked and overwhelmed, when they need a shoulder to lean on and an ear to listen to, we are there. Ultimately, That is why I serve, to bring the divine presence into the lives of men and women that need it and connect them to their Creator. We are pastors to some and chaplains to all. The military is one of the most diverse institutions in our country. Airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and now Space Guardsmen, representing every corner of the country, every color, ethnicity, and creed. I am reminded that Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, pagans, atheists, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, and indigenous have shed blood on behalf of this country. All of these noble men and women that make up less than 1% of the population of this country made a commitment to protect and uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They have all been called upon to be separated from their families for 3, 6, 12, even 15 months at a time, and to go into areas of contention and combat on behalf of our nation's interests. They have all been called upon to uproot and relocate their families every 3 to 4 years at the behest of the nation. They were called and they answered the call. We must never succumb to blind prejudice and stereotyping, pigeonholing and labeling people into our neat little categories. But must remember that we don't know everyone's story. Veterans of every ethnic group, tribe, race, and creed have bled and died for this country, and we must honor them. We cannot afford to make assumptions about someone within those categories because we never know if they were the ones, one of those glorious 1% that answered this nation's call. During officer training and chaplain school, we heard many stories of POWs and those that were captured and killed in the line of duty. And every time, one question comes to mind. What would I do in that situation? If I were captured, would I be able to persevere in the midst of the harshest of circumstances? Sometimes for years at a time? I like to hope that I would. But the truth is, none of us knows how we would react until we are in that circumstance. The men and women that we celebrate today made their choice, and they chose sacrifice and service. Sadly, in this country, there are too many veterans whom we have failed. There are too many that suffer some injury in combat or suffer from mental illness, such as PTSD, as a result of their service, who are not receiving the treatment that they need. I have personally counseled and dealt with veterans from the Air Force, Army, and Navy who are fighting to get proper disability benefits, who are struggling to make ends meet and pay basic bills and find gainful employment. Many of them have grown bitter and resentful that they have to go through such things after serving their country in the harshest of circumstances. My prayer is that this Veterans Day weekend, we commit to doing more for our veterans than just honoring them 1 or 2 days a year and paying them lip service. I pray that we commit as a country and a community to make sure that they have access to the resources that they need in order to live a respectable life. They deserve that much after having seen the things they've seen and done the things they've done in service to this nation. When I'm out and about in the community wearing my uniform, I'm often stopped and told, "Thank you for your service." However, when I'm out and about in the community out of uniform, and I see a gentleman or a lady with a veteran's hat or a pin or a bumper sticker, I stop and tell them, "Thank you for your service," because their service paved the way for my service. Their service kept us free so I could have the choice to serve. However, there are others that have answered the call to make the ultimate sacrifice. I think of martyrs in the cause of justice, like Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Little Bobby Hutton, Fred Hampton, Coretta Scott King, Betty Shabazz, Rosa Parks, Assata Shakur, among many others. I include these names and not the names like George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, among many others, because they did not sacrifice their lives intentionally, but it was stolen from them. But the aforementioned men and women put themselves on the front lines. Like our military, they signed the dotted line and raised the right hand to make a vow of service and commitment, even if that commitment requests their lives. So how do we honor these men and women? How do we honor their sacrifice and legacy? First, we must remember. Just a few days ago was Malcolm X Day, or Malcolm's birthday, and I took time to honor him. A few weeks from now is Juneteenth, the day that African Americans celebrate the emancipation from slavery, specifically here in Texas, when plantation owners refused to acknowledge the Emancipation Proclamation until federal soldiers came on June 19, 1865, and informed the slaves that they were, in fact, free. We must take the time and recognize and acknowledge these days, moments, and events. And of course, tomorrow we acknowledge the sacrifice made by those in military service. We should also take a moment to acknowledge and remember the sacrifice of those made in civil service. Remembrance is something that transcends all religious traditions. The Hebrew scriptures frequently highlight the importance of remembrance with memorials such as altars, holy days such as Passover, Shabbat, and the Feast of Booths. The New Testament calls for Christian believers to remember the death and resurrection of Jesus by partaking in a memorial meal. The Quran calls for Muslims to constantly remember God in everything that they do. The Buddhist tradition calls us to the 5 remembrances, which will lead us to a holistic, balanced life. And virtually every indigenous spirituality around the world calls us to remember and acknowledge the ancestors. We remember significant moments and events all the time, such as birthdays and anniversaries. We have days to remember mothers, fathers, Black history, women's history, indigenous history, Asian and Pacific American history, Hispanic heritage, and history, among many other things. The point is, if we are not accustomed to practicing remembrance in our lives, then we should begin. If we are accustomed to practicing remembrance, then I invite us to expand the things and people whom we remember. Most of all, I invite us to remember by doing something. Take action. What good is it if I remember the spiritual teacher, but do not follow the spiritual teachings? What good is it if I remember servicemen and women who have sacrificed their lives and ignore the needs of veterans who have survived and are struggling? True remembrance is action. True remembrance must translate from mere word to deed. In the Christian scriptures, in the Gospel of John, Jesus is attributed as saying, "Greater love has no person than this, that they lay down their lives for their friends." John 15:13. The people that we celebrate today are those who laid down their lives for their country. They laid down their lives for their people. They laid down their lives for freedom. They laid down their lives for justice. They laid down their lives for the ideal. Now, many of those ideals have not yet been reached. Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go to live up to the ideals of equality, freedom, justice, and peace. Our jobs, then, are to continue that work. We may not be called to raise our right hands, but there are many ways in which we can get involved in the work of freedom, justice, and equality for all people. And so I challenge us today, as we celebrate Memorial Day, commemorating those who laid down their lives on our behalf, that we also remember to continue their work, that we remember to continue the fight. And as it was said in one scripture passage, that it will be said of us when it's all said and done, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and now I make you faithful over many." Bless you. Amen.
Remembrance Day, poem composed by Claire Stewart. She stands in the cold. Her black cloth coat suits the occasion, but fails to keep her warm despite the gleam of silver at her breast. Her thoughts circle round. Why did we have another war? Didn't we lose enough men already? Why did my sons have to die? Oh God, keep me upright. Help me not to scream out their names. What will we have for dinner tonight? What would Joey and Bill have wanted? It's so hard to have faith. It's so hard to have hope. Why do my sons have to die? Jesus, you comforted your mother as she stood and watched you die. If I pray hard enough, will you bring comfort to me? If that preacher says noble sacrifice one more time, I'll scream. I'll scream out their names so hard the dead will hear me. Only this time I'll scream it out loud instead of in my heart. But she doesn't scream. She stands beside the honor guard, who are older than her sons were when they died. The people nearby watch her, wondering how she can stand so still, so calm. Knowing she lost 2 boys, thinking she has lost her grief after all these years. When to her, it might have been today. As we end our service, let us remember our country began with war. I think many of us forget this. Our freedom did not come without a price our military continues to pay. We may take for granted the many liberties we enjoy in America, but they have been earned by those who lost their lives to create and keep it. May we remember them beyond this day. Bienvenidos.